Welcome to the Investing Ahead podcast. I'm Tom Curran. Today we have Emily Bornhurst. Emily is a certified financial planner. She is our senior wealth manager. She's been with Curran now for 11 years, and it's so good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Emily, we want to talk a little bit about clients, particularly newer clients.
Sure.
At this time. What do you think people are looking for when they come to us and they've, let's say, changed their advisors? That's always a difficult thing for most people to do. What is it that you think makes them look around, come to us? Tell us what you think the industry should be doing better.
Sure. I think clients are most interested in feeling understood. And, that could apply to multiple different meanings. Understood in their financial situation, understood in their investments, understood in their goals and their objectives. And I think it's easy for an advisor to put together an investment plan and put together, a financial plan or a retirement plan that is maybe good on paper, but is not diving deep into what makes every client unique. What is their specific goals? What's this money supposed to do for them over their lifetimes? And feeling understood and feeling heard from the beginning, I think is most important. And so when we meet with new clients that are transitioning from another advisor, I think the investment piece is important, certainly. But I think what I find personally is the focus of the meeting is, what is most important to you and how can we help you achieve those goals, and developing a plan together.
I hadn't planned to talk about sales or compensation, but when you started talking, it occurred to me that maybe we should talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
When I and Kevin, when we created Curran Wealth Management, I said to myself, I don't think we ever want to have a business that is based on sales. So your compensation and how you're rewarded is not based on sales.
Correct.
With the exception that we reward our employees when they bring in a new client. So, for example, I think we can share this. We have no salespeople. So we have the typical brokerage firm, the typical financial advisor. The advisor gets as much as half of the revenues that the client pays. We don't do that. We pay our employees a salary for how well they help our clients. And we pay all of our employees 100% of all clients' first year business. And that's distributed to people like you. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason we do that is I never wanted a client to be sold to. I wanted the client to be spoken to. When you use the term be understood, it became really, really apparent to me that's your primary goal. And we believe that if our clients are understood and served well, they'll do business with us. And right. I believe that we compensate our employees in a way which makes that more likely. So our employees get a competitive salary. They get 5 different bonuses a year. They can all be significant.
Sure.
Okay. You have a defined benefit plan. You have 100%. You have a match on your 401k, whether you participate in the plan or not. It's what we call a safe harbor plan. So our approach has been, if we compensate our employees in a way that allows them to serve the needs of the clients, which if I were to ask you what's the most important thing for you in serving clients or doing business with clients, what would you say?
The most important thing is, I think, being able to split your time between servicing your existing clients and making sure that they still feel like they have a trusted relationship with us as an advisor, while also working with referrals and helping them onboard as clients. And I'll note, to your point before, one of the things that attracted me to Curran when I first was hired was that compensation plan, that there wasn't a sales quota hung over my head that I had to meet on a regular basis. And I think that really allows us to provide quality service to our existing clients, because they're not forgotten. It's not bring them on board and, get that sales compensation and move on. They're not forgotten. They're still very much a part of what we do on a daily basis. And I think that's really important. And I think that's what's helped our client retention over the years.
When you have questions that come up with clients, how do you bring in Kevin, the chief investment officer? How do you bring in Alexis Meeks, who is our tax manager for Hippo Tax Services? Any number of other people that get involved, to include traders, how we do things, how we raise money for required minimum distributions. Talk a little bit about the other people.
Sure. One of the things that I think has changed the most significantly since my first year with Curran to now is the transition to this team approach. And, quality service, I think, is more than just meeting once a year to talk about how your investment portfolio has performed over the previous year. That's important, and that's a big piece of what we do. But it's also, determining what else might be important in that meeting. So sometimes that's a tax conversation. And a tax conversation would include Alexis Meeks, our tax manager. We run tax projections often for clients that are helpful in determining retirement savings strategies or different ways to transition investment strategies. Taxes play a role in all of that. So it's often important that we bring Alexis into that as well. Kevin also is on the investment side. Some clients really want to discuss market conditions, what our projections might look like, past performance. They want to dive into their portfolio and really have a significant conversation about holdings and strategies. That's where it's important to bring Kevin or yourself into the conversation so that we can include more in-depth details surrounding those questions. Same thing with the trader, or even Derek, Vice President of Wealth Management. We'll bring him in often as well for more complex financial planning scenarios. So I think it's important that clients understand that when you call Curran Wealth Management, it's not just me, it's not just you. You have a team of people that are working with you, often behind the scenes, but then as well, they can very much join your meetings and be a part of those conversations.
When we started Curran Wealth, one of my concerns was that the typical approach that the industry uses is a team of advisors that depend extremely on the revenue that the client base produces and how that controls the delivery of business. Now, when I say that from experience, because that's the way I grew up in the business. I grew up being the financial advisor, being the go-to person. And while, yes, we always had the resources were maybe in San Francisco or New York City. They weren't in the office. And what we've tried to do is bring together a team of investment professionals to include accounting, investment management, trading, corporate services, all in one place so that they're not distant. They are part of the ongoing approach. So I grew up, it's one of those things that I said in one of the earlier podcasts, I learned a lot of things that I said when I did it myself, when my name was on the wall. I didn't want to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why we don't do it that way because I don't think it's the way to deliver maximum services. And I think, Emily, you're a good example of how we do things and how that doesn't fit into the traditional delivery of financial services. So now we have the client, they're on board, they get to know what we're doing, and financial planning is a part of it. I think today, more than ever before, people are concerned about retirement, retirement incomes. Do I have enough money to last? How will I get my money when I'm retired? A little history here. 20 years ago, when we sat down and talked to a client, their primary concern is what they would do with their estate. And now that doesn't come up as much. How do I get my money to my children? How do I get my money to charitable interests of mine? The primary question is always, will I
have enough to retire?
Right.
Yep.
Will I run out of money?
Yep.
And that has occurred over the last, well, certainly since you've been in the business, but it has really, really been a big factor when the typical client sits down. Will I run out of money?
Yes.
So how do we handle that? The Monte Carlo analysis is
Sure.
one way. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll say that I agree that I think the two biggest questions I get is, do I have enough to retire? Will I run out of money is number one. And number two is, when do I start switching to bonds? And the answer to both questions is, there's no blanket answer. It depends.
Right.
And so that's where planning and analysis comes into place. And so one of the things that we do is take a look at a client's full financial picture. So that includes, current accounts, outside accounts, income sources, pensions, Social Security, expenses. And we can do that in a couple of different ways. We can work through a budget. We can look at tax returns. There's a number of different ways that we can handle that. We look at how accounts are invested. We look at goals in particular. So when do you want to retire? When you retire, are you keeping your home? Are you downsizing? Are you thinking of purchasing, a vacation home? We try to have a really in-depth conversation about what retirement will look like first. And then from there, we can use the tools that we have to put together a comprehensive analysis. And that analysis really focuses on all of those aspects. We make some projections about performance. We make some projections about inflation. And then from there, we kind of can back into, based on your current scenario, based on your savings rate, this is how much you'll need at retirement. And that can change regularly. So it's important to revisit it often. But that's really the primary focus of that kind of analysis, is determining, well, what will you need at retirement and what is then a sustainable withdrawal rate? And that's different for everyone. For those who have pensions, that would look very different than someone who does not. For those clients who are focused on a legacy for their kids, their plan is going to look very different than someone who that's not as important. So it's really identifying the unique goals for every client and then putting together a plan that makes sense and revisiting regularly to make sure we're still on track for that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Monte Carlo?
Sure.
I'll maybe comment a little bit too, but why don't you talk about Monte Carlo and how we use that to determine if someone has enough money or not?
Sure. So the analysis is two-part. The first part is a straight line projection. So based on the amount you have now, based on the return assumptions we're using, inflation assumptions, expense assumptions, we project that out from now until we typically use age 95. And it's a straight line projection. Everything grows by a certain amount per year. Your expenses grow by a certain amount per year. And that's helpful, but that doesn't really take into consideration volatility. So that's where Monte Carlo is useful. And what Monte Carlo does is it takes those same projections and assumptions that we just reviewed And the only thing it changes is the return sequence of the investment returns. So it demonstrates how volatility might impact your probability of success. So it runs your projections through 1,000 different trial runs. Each trial run represents a different sequence of returns. And the result you get at the end is your probability of successfully having money at age 95. And so that helps us determine where you might fall as far as planning goes. We usually consider anything above an 80% to be a pretty successful plan. If you fall in that range, great. There's not much we have to do. But if you don't, it just signals that we need to tweak some things and work on some expectations and maybe make some modifications. It doesn't happen often, but...
Talk a little bit about how bonds factor into that. I'll comment that when people are in retirement, they frequently believe that they will improve their chances of successfully navigating retirement, having enough money if they buy more bonds. Comment about that.
Yeah, a common viewpoint is that the closer you are to retirement, the more bonds you need in your portfolio. And in some situations, having fixed income or bonds in your portfolio makes sense if you want some stability as you start drawing from your accounts. But, particularly over the last couple of years or the last year or so, where we've seen inflation significantly rise, that needs to be taken into consideration, and return expectations for bonds do not outpace the inflation figures that we're often using for some of these retirement scenarios. And so it's important that you are, or that clients, I should say, are being mindful of that and maintaining proper equity exposure in their portfolio to achieve returns that are significant enough that they'll be able to sustainably withdraw from their portfolio over the long run. While also, your equity to fixed income ratio is very personal as well. You want to make sure that you've got, if you're someone who is very weary, you do want some stability in your portfolio to, perhaps provide you some comfort when the market is a little wobbly. But it's important to keep in mind, I think, the significance equity plays in a portfolio over your lifetime.
How do people react when the question comes up and we tweak a projection using Monte Carlo to add bonds or decrease bonds when they see that actually probabilities for success correlate with more stocks?
Yeah, I think it's surprising for most people because I think it's still very ingrained in everyone's line of thinking that when you retire, you increase your fixed income. And when you actually portray what that looks like on paper and show how that impacts your account value growth and sustainable withdrawal rates and all of that, I think it's surprising for most people to see the difference in wealth when you compare the two.
I think from my point of view, I think it's very important to show clients that the decision is still theirs. But I think that decision, no matter how they choose to act, is a whole lot better when they see that sort of illustration.
Right.
There's more what I would call a reasonable expectation then.
Yes. Yeah, and I think for some, the peace of mind that having increased fixed income exposure in their portfolio is worth it. And as long as you lay that out, as you noted, and you provide comparisons, it can be a very personal decision as well.
And we can certainly show someone that if you choose to do that, and, for example, have what most people would describe as a more conservative portfolio, if you reduce your withdrawal rate, that may help a lot in keeping your probability for success high.
Right.
That there could be a trade-off. Take out less, get a more conservative portfolio.
Right.
You get less volatility, you get a high degree of certainty, but you recognize that you might have to take less out every month.
Right. Yeah, and that's the guessing game when we put together these types of analysis is, often we'll put together a base scenario, and from there we'll add alternate scenarios. So what happens if your withdrawal rate decreases or increases? What happens if you save more now? What does that look like? What happens if your investment allocation changes? And I think highlighting all those different options is important to help the client understand how their different decisions can impact their plan over the long run.
I want to kind of digress from this conversation a little bit because one of the factors that I think is important, at least in the delivery of financial services, is someone like me who has spent their entire adult life, even educationally, a lot of it was in the area of finance. How do we keep that history, that in place, and still involve younger people, much younger people like yourself? I think it's very important, especially in financial matters, to entwine those. And I can confess that at my age, I've learned so much about particularly people and the human side of investing that I didn't either have the time or the inclination or whatever to learn when I was younger. And I've come to believe, and this is a bias on my part, but I've come to believe that if you can deliver services that allow the older, the wisdom to flow through in the culture of what we do with someone like you and our clients, that is something that money can't buy. What I've learned in the last 15 years, I've learned so much that I couldn't have learned and executed if I retired when I was 65. So I think it's a big part of what we do. And I believe in the area of financial services, particularly when we're dealing with people who run the age spectrum with families from 20 to 30 somethings to the senior, my age, to be able to have conversations that can incorporate your view as a young mother, parent, financial service provider, me as one who's been through that, done that, and now looking at things in a much different way. I believe it's something we bring that money simply can't buy. It's something that only time can buy. And I believe that one of my goals is to be able to convey what I call the culture to a much younger workforce. Kevin was on before you in a previous podcast, yourself, and a staff of people that we can incorporate all that. And I believe I can say things to the clients who you are responsible for that you probably would feel a little uneasy saying, where I can say, let's talk about nursing homes. And it's a whole different, one of the things I don't like to say it, but you've heard me say to more mature clients who are planning for that part of their life. And I can say, you can make that decision or someone else will make it for you. Now, which one would you rather do? And of course, people my age would always say, well, no, I want to make those decisions myself. So I can be a part of a conversation, and I think you've probably heard me say that, which I think makes a meeting unique. As you know, I'm not involved in a lot of the meetings. I try to play the role that I think I can play at this time in my life. So your title is Wealth Manager for a reason. You call on me when you need me, but I'm always available, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have, clients who have been with you for decades who appreciate when you do stop in and say hello. And it's nice to have you in the office regularly and able to do that when clients come into the office.
And we have children of clients who I've known for 30, 35 years, maybe 40 years. And now you know them, their children, and in some cases, grandchildren. I don't know them. Mm-hmm. I know the parents. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting dynamic to watch unfold.
And I think it's really nice that we do have a number of clients who involve their kids and bring their children to meetings to just start the process of listening and getting a better understanding of what an advisor can do for you and what saving can do for you. And we have a number of clients who do that, which is nice. And then those kids become clients. And so we're in a way, starting to get the ball rolling with younger generations, which is, I think, important.
One last question, Emily. What do you think is in your pursuit of your career in financial services, what's the most gratifying thing you feel in your career?
I think the most gratifying thing is working with a client who truly appreciates what you're doing for them. And that is, I think, oftentimes we do this so often that it comes naturally to us to think about retirement saving and insurance and estate planning. And it's something that we think about daily. And for a lot of our clients, this is not what they do for a living. So being able to sit down with a client and work them through that and work them through those, it's easy to ask someone, what are your goals and your objectives? That's a hard question to answer. So being able to work through that and identify that and put together an analysis and a plan that makes sense for them and watching them, it's one thing also to put a plan in place. It's another thing to execute it. So then to have that, work over the years and feel that appreciation, I think is extremely gratifying. I think we do a really good job at that with our clients.
We like to say, if we can't read between the lines, we can't read it all.
That's right.
And frequently, that's an important thing we need to do every day. Emily, it's been a pleasure having you with us. It's a pleasure having you at Curran Wealth Management.
Thank you so much.
I thank you for watching this podcast. This is Tom Curran. Goodbye with thanks.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Investing Ahead podcast with Tom Curran. Look for the Investing Ahead book and audiobook available everywhere. Executive producer Brendan Kennedy. Directed and produced by John Wager. Engineered and edited by Adam Russell and Edith Fitzsimmons. Filmed and recorded at Galileo Media Arts Studios. Copyright 2024 Thomas Curran. All rights reserved. For more information, visit investingaheadpodcast.com.